And good Friday morning.
Yeah, well, Friday afternoon, wherever it is that you are, but we are sure glad that you have chosen to join Rural Community Solutions, where we help you design family-friendly, youth-centered places that thrive. I'm Kim Spillers.
And I'm Frank Spillers, and we help design those places through your environment that attract people. Attract the people that you want to live, work, and play in your business, in your church, in your community, in your family. Have you ever wondered what attracts people to your family? Well, yeah, we can talk a little bit deeper about that. But today we're going to be talking about how do you change your community's mind. So come on back, stay with us, and we're going to change your mind.
Picture, if you will, the pure, raw prairie. No wires, no fences, no roads, not even a farmhouse. No sign of civilization. This is what a person saw that was crossing the prairie in a wagon more than 170 years ago. They jumped off the wagon, looked around, and declared, "This is where I want to settle and build a town. A great place to live and a great place to raise my family." So they took a risk. They built a house made out of the land, planted food to eat, and cared for the land. Then they wrote back to their friends where they came from and described the great opportunity and promise that they have found. They invited who they knew to join them in their discovery, people they had a relationship with, and so they came, family by family, and those families invited others they knew who they wanted to live with within that community. The communities grew because the needs of the families grew, so entrepreneurs started businesses to meet those community needs. Ice houses, broom factories, general stores, and many other types of sole proprietor entrepreneurial businesses started up within the community. All of our communities across this country, all around the world, were started in this way, with a vision of the future and a plan to grow with people.
And grow with people they did. Now, you might be seeing and hearing the description of what the show
Was supposed to be
and then how we opened up the show. Well, you know, since this is live and you do scheduling, sometimes the schedule just doesn't work out. So we apologize if you're tuning in to talk about digital nomads and Portugal, because our guest didn't make it.
We don't know what happened. We haven't heard from him. But if you tuned in hoping to hear about how to make a digital community anywhere in the world, we're going to have to put a pin in that and do that another time. So what we're going to be talking about today is the value of identifying what your community mind is like and how you might want to think about changing it.
Well, and this is it does work with how do you create a digital nomad community, yes. Because in today's day and age is what we're looking at is how do we transform our communities into what they are, into what they could be based upon the future environment that is going to be happening. That is happening. Everyone's going digital. We're finding people working from home, and that is going to stay. People are going to be working from home, even though we have the vaccine and we're getting back and out. I'm not calling that a new normal. I'm not finding that, because there should be not a normal in your community, because the world is constantly changing. And so as you're looking at what you can make your community, because of the digitalization of our workforce and of our economy as a digital economy, if you've ever heard that term before, we are attracting and wanting to attract entrepreneurs to live, work, and play within our community. And so what is that going to entail is to changing some of your culture, changing some of your mindset about what attracts people to your community. Now, that is changing its mind, changing its mindset. Let me define what mind is. Okay, mind is this, and this is from Webster's dictionary. Mind is this: the element or complex of elements in an individual that feels, perceives, thinks, wills, and especially reasons. So your mind, if I had you point to your mind, and we do this quite often in our workshops, I say, point to your mind, and everybody goes, not everybody, but most people will go, it's up here. Well, that's your brain. Your brain is a physical structure of neurons that connect neurons based upon your actions and your beliefs. Your mind is actually your emotions, your belief system, and the emotions to it. So, as Dr. Greg Braden would say, your heart talks to your mind first. So it's your emotions that talk to your mind first that create the mind that you have, that create the belief system that you have. And that belief system comes from the environment that you're looking at, that you're experiencing. It comes from the environment that you are in immediately. So you can change that environment by changing your belief system or changing the belief system of your community.
So what happens is, and it really relates directly back to the opening video that we use often because that's how our communities were formed, is that at the time our communities were formed, there was a group of people who came from a certain area back east, if you're in the Midwest, wherever it comes from. A group of people moved from some part of the world to the place where your town is located. They were often families who got along together and they decided to form this town, this settlement. They had very similar thoughts, most likely. And so as they grew that community, they wrote back to people from the homeland and said, hey, you need to come out here. Well, what happens is that then you get group think, you get community think. Your community has a mind of its own, often based on very similar characteristics, very often the same values. And so that opening video is just really pertinent to how your community began.
This is where you get traditions.
Yes, heritage. And those things are very, very important. And you can actually make tourism and all kinds of economic impact from those heritage and from those traditions for festivals and things like that. What we encourage communities to be thinking about is to recognize that if you're still thinking in the way that your community was formed 150, 200, 250, 300 years ago, if you're still thinking in that way, what kind of outcome is taking place in your town? Are you growing? Is your population declining? What's going on with your schools? Is your district growing? How about your business community? If you're still thinking in that same community mind that started when your town was formed hundreds of years ago, then you might want to be thinking about it's time to change the thinking and the mind of the community.
So how do you do that? Because that's not an easy process to do, but based upon our research and based upon our experience and our models that we have used, that we have tested this, it comes down to utilizing the 4 pillars of building community prosperity. And those 4 pillars are relationships, engagement, collaboration, and entrepreneurship. And based upon those pillars, you build an entrepreneurial wealth system, an entrepreneurial economy. Now, I'm going to be focusing on, or we're going to be focusing on today, just on 2 of those pillars of relationships and engagement. Because in relationships, you're building the relationships with people. But if you use relationship building, you learn leadership skills and how to build relationships. Then you learn engagement skills. How do you engage the community? What's the process to engage the community to talk through those issues that possibly or most likely have been swept under the rug for years and years and years and years? And you have just a belief system how you take and handle problems. This engagement process that you do will then change the environment in your community, that will change the thought process, that will then change the value system, that will talk about the value system. So when you build relationships and you build that engagement process, you build trust in your community. Now, what does trust do? Trust is a foundational value that you have in any relationship. If you don't have a trusting relationship, you really don't have a relationship that can become what it wants to become. You have to build that. And so there's certain steps that you can do, certain steps that we help communities train and talk through those types of issues that build the engagement, that create an environment to where people feel they have been heard. Remember, emotion, they feel they have been heard. They know they have been heard. And so they start to trust the process. They start to trust within the environment. Now, as you talk to people, you're talking about their position, right? Because people will take positions on items. And this is what's happening in this country right now. But it hasn't just happened over the last 4 years. This has been a culture of political building for decades. This has been a culture in politics. This has been a culture in how we address democracy over the course of years and over the course of decades. So now people have positions just like that. Way back then, they've always had positions. What we do is help people break down those positions into interests. What is a person's interest and why do they take the position that they take? That interest there, that's the needs and concerns and the values that motivate an individual. When you start talking about what interests an individual, then you start understanding the position that they take. You start understanding the back information, the background story. We call it the problem behind the problem. And that is a process that we use as you're looking at issues that can be disruptive.
And the reason we feel that this is so incredibly valuable is about inclusion. It's about all of the valuable information and experiences and observations that everybody who lives in our community can offer when we make decisions and we ask what's happened to them. Ask their input, because then we're going to get people all around the community who are going to support an idea. They may support something that the city council wants to do, or the county supervisors, or a new plan of growth or something like that. But the important thing is to include those voices so that people do feel that they have been heard and they're not shoved into a corner someplace and feel that they are forgotten or they're not valued or they don't mean anything, and that they are truly part of the community. This is really important to update your community's mind if you want to grow your population, if you want to have a thriving community, if you want to grow your business district, if you want to improve your economy and your quality of life and how happy people are and how satisfied they are living in your community. These are all really important points that are going to be outcomes. They're going to be results of including people. And now we're going to show you just a couple of things why, if you don't do this, what could happen.
So let me talk just a little bit about the values of people. All right, the values that you feel have all been made up over your lifetime. You grew up in a family that had specific values. You grew up in a community that had specific values. And this is where you might hear rural values. Okay, what are rural values? That is very specific to an individual. But a person's sense of well-being, all right, that the I am comfortable, people listen to me, and it is formed by basically three criteria: how safe they feel, how they feel about their quality of life where they are. And quality of life is an individual as DNA and as your fingerprints. Quality of life is a perception issue based upon how a person perceives their quality of life. And it's also based upon the third element is choice. The number of choices an individual has in what is going on in their life. And so if policymakers, elected officials are making choices for an individual, you get discord. You get people that are upset. You get people whose sense of well-being is starting to be jostled around because they won't feel safe. They feel their quality of life is getting upset and all their choices are taken away. So what happens when a person's perceived level of choices is taken away? When that happens, the issue is more disruptive. So the more the more you take away people's choices about how they can talk through an issue, about what is going on, that they feel out of control, that they don't have a choice of what's going on, the more disruptive that issue is. Now, the more disruptive the issue is, the higher the cost it is into solving that issue. So if an issue is very disruptive, the high cost is in solving it. Now, not just a monetary cost to solve, but you are wasting a lot of resources as the issue remains under the rug. It starts to fester, it starts to grow, it starts to become disruptive because you're not handling it. And so as you ignore that issue under the rug, the cost to resolve that in time, money, resources, volunteerism, people's perception, joining in your organization, all that is affected, and it costs your organization huge amounts of resources. So the more that you sweep things under the rug and don't address them and don't allow people to talk through the issues, the more disruptive that issue gets. And the more disruptive the issue gets, the higher the cost it is to resolve it, even if you want to resolve it. And that resolving that issue in time and resources takes some time to start changing the mind of your community. And that's very important these days of how are we changing the minds of communities? How are we changing the minds of organizations? How are we changing the minds of voters? If we look at some people that are not voting because they are so disgruntled with the political process, it's because their needs and issues are not getting talked about by people. They don't feel a connection between what's going on, the choices that they have, and what is happening within their life. So you need to start connecting up what is happening in people's lives, why they feel the way they feel, what are their values, talking about the interest in the issue, not the position, the interest in the issue, and then starting to formulate policies around how to help that individual, how to help those folks with the interest that they have. So as you look at this, it's not a political party issue. It is a single citizen issue of how do you connect that up. And so that's why we say it's to talk through the issue, not just talk about the issue. Because what's really, in my personal opinion, is what's really happening here right now is that we have elected officials that think they know what to do, but they're not talking to individuals on a deliberative dialogue basis in a structured form to get to the values that that individual holds. Right? And so that is that disruptive issue. And this is my reason why we have, this is my reasoning why we have disruption in democracy these days, and people are so disgruntled with what's going on, is because they're not being addressed.
Traditionally, this is a really long-held practice in the United States anyway. we either elect people or we go to people who are experts, our doctor, our lawyer, people who are trained, educated, put in positions of influence. And for many, 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 many years, we've just turned decision making over to them, even though we should be included in the decision making process with the advice and guidance of the person who is the expert. And so this is why it is a little more challenging to change the mind of a community. And it's not that it's a right or wrong thing. It is, the idea is just to be inclusive so that you have as many voices as possible who are helping to make that decision, because the more information that we gather, the better we're going to be able to make a decision that is going to be beneficial to everybody concerned in whatever community you're talking about.
And so Don Mackey has done a study of Ord, Nebraska. Don is a partner of ours, and we partner with him on a whole host of entrepreneurial ecosystem type of building systems and helping communities to transform into supporting entrepreneurial economies. Don spent a good 20 years working with the community of Ord, Nebraska. Now, Ord, Nebraska had marginalized groups. All right, they had the Posse Comitatus. They had other groups that were marginalized and militaristic. Is that right?
Militaristic. It's okay.
Okay, close.
Yes.
All right.
They are people with very strong opinions on a multiple range of subjects.
And how they would separate. Now, these marginalized groups, they don't have to be as radical as some marginalized groups are, but you will have marginalized groups in every community because they don't feel a part of what's going on in the community. So they don't become involved. They're in the background. They are around the outskirts. Marginalized means just around that out group. So your community then needs to put into place a process that brings the group in. And this is what Ord, Nebraska did. That was their first. Now, was it easy? No, but that was their first step. And how do we transform our community from losing population, from disintegrating from the inside out? And that is, we need to make a decision that we are going to put into place processes that are inclusive of everybody, even those marginalized groups. We need to listen to what they're saying. We need to have civility and civil conversations around what their interests are, not their positions. We know what their positions are. Why? We need to know the interest of them, and then we can start talking through those issues. So if you're a community that needs its mind change, or if you're an organization that wants to include more people and to get more people involved in what you do, you need to change the process of how you address the issues that your organization, your community then addresses. Then you find whose interests are the similar and whose interests you can help in helping solve what their interests will be, and that's based upon their values. So we have a community engagement institute that really helps this. We have a leadership institute that really helps this. That's a relationship and engagement that will build trust within your community. So give us a shout, give us a contact. You can contact us at frank@ghorizons.com or kim@ghorizons.com, and we can have a conversation about how your community can address incivility and maybe conflict that's going on in there, but those disruptive issues that you might be sweeping under the rug. It's important that you do that if you're wanting to transform and if you're wanting to grow. Specifically, if you're wanting to grow in entrepreneurial aspects, attract entrepreneurs and attract a digital economy within your community.
It's an exciting time for community redevelopment, and we're excited to be here to be able to share some ideas, our experiences, our observations, and the institutes that we have that can help your community. We look forward to hearing from you. We are excited to be here. We thank you for joining us, for listening to the ideas that we have about changing your community's mind to be more inclusive, to benefit you for the future of work.
So come back every Monday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, and we'll be talking about how to create an entrepreneurial community through a whole host of processes that you can do, changing the culture of your community, changing the thought process of your community, and changing the mindset of your community. We're glad that you joined us 10:30 or 11:30 a.m. Central Time every Monday through Friday. Come on back, and next week we'll have more exciting editions.
Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Take care and be safe.